morning, everyone. Welcome to 21st Century Philippines and World Literature. We are already at our 15th week, and for week 15, our topic is about romantic literature and Asian literature. So, for this week's topic, we will understand the history of both literature eras and also the groups of romantic literature and Asian literature, and also the famous poets and um, literary works that were established during these eras. So for this week topic or lesson, I will just show you some videos in order for us to further understand the lesson about romantic literature and Asian literature. So let's proceed to our videos.
This video will define Romanticism, consider the social and historical factors that led to Romanticism, identify significant Romantic poets and authors, identify the major characteristics of Romantic literature, link Romanticism and Transcendentalism, and define the Byronic hero.
This is the story of man's escape from the shackles of commerce and industry to the freedom of nature. At a time when the world was becoming increasingly mechanized, the Romantics sought an intense relationship with the natural world. In so doing, they would revolutionize our perception of life itself.
So what led to Romanticism? Romanticism began roughly around the time of the start of the French Revolution in 1789, and it finished around 1850. Romanticism was a reaction against the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment. To be a Romantic is to take the side of nature against industry. The Romantics viewed cities as grimy, ugly, and soulless. In William Blake's poem Jerusalem, he links the Industrial Revolution to the ultimate evil, the devil. And was Jerusalem builded here, among these dark satanic mills? The Romantics challenged the scientific, sociological outlook on life that was promoted during the Enlightenment. In particular, the Romantics disagreed with the Enlightenment's values of progress and rationality, especially progress as defined by technological advancement and urbanization. And just to look a quick definition of sociology, which is the study of social behaviour or society. So I've whipped up a quick table for you to look at to measure the Enlightenment against the Romantics. The Enlightenment was all about reason. In contrast, the Romantics were about passion and emotion. The Enlightenment about human nature, the Romantics about nature itself. The Enlightenment was man overcoming nature. The Romantics was about nature being more important than man. The Enlightenment were about material possessions. The Romantics were more about spiritual. The Enlightenment was about laboratory observation. The Romantics were more about intuition and insight. So here is, look, a very brief sample of Romantic poets. There are lots more that I've missed out. But William Wordsworth, Lord Byron, John Keats, Christina Rossetti, all very important Romantic poets. So some Romantic authors, again, obviously there are lots more, but some important ones were Charlotte Bronte, Mary Shelley, Anne Radcliffe, and Emily Bronte. So what characterises Romantic literature? Romanticism is characterised by its emphasis on emotion, the purity of childhood, the glorification of the past and critique of progress, absolute truth, and the deification of nature. Wordsworth summed up the importance that the Romantics placed on emotion when he said that poetry began as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, which the poet then recollects in tranquility. Caspar David Friedrich, a German painter, also championed the idealization of emotion when he said, "The artist's feeling is his law." The purity of childhood. The importance of a happy and playful childhood was a belief that developed during the Romantic period. William Blake championed the innocence and spiritual purity of childhood. In the 19th century, some working class parents sold their sons. These boys, aged between 4 to 7 years, would become chimney sweeps, which was a miserable work. Many of the sweeps became deformed or were killed due to their work. the glorification of the past and critique of progress. The cult of the Middle Ages is a significant theme in Romanticism. Romanticism revived elements of art and literature perceived as authentically medieval in an attempt to escape population growth, early urban sprawl, and industrialism. The Romanticist is on a ceaseless quest for absolute truth. As discussed, Romanticism was a movement away from the objective truths of science towards the more subjective truth of art. Ultimately, the Romanticist would discover truth in nature.
There is a pleasure in the pathless woods. There is a rapture on the lonely shore. There is society where none intrudes. By the deep sea and music in its roar. I love not man the less, but nature more. From these our interviews, in which I steal from all I may be or have been before, to mingle with the universe and feel what I can ne'er express, yet cannot all conceal.
Transcendentalism was a branch of Romanticism. It was a philosophical movement that developed in the late 1820s and 1830s in America. Transcendentalists believed in the inherent goodness of both people and nature. They believed that society and its institutions ultimately corrupted the purity of the individual, and had faith that people are at their best when truly self-reliant and independent.
I went to the woods because I wanted to live deliberately. I wanted to live deep and suck out all the marrow of life.
I'll second that.
To put to rout all that was not life, and not when I had come to die, discover that I had not lived.
The Byronic hero is a character based simultaneously on Lord Byron's writing and his own character. The traits that characterise a Byronic hero are a dislike for social institutions, an exile, an outcast or an outlaw, arrogance, cunning and an ability to adapt, cynical, dark attributes not normally associated with a hero, disrespectful of rank and privilege. The Byronic hero is also emotionally conflicted, moody, high level of intelligence and perception, mysterious, magnetic and charismatic, the power of seduction and attraction, self-critical and introspective, self-destructive behaviour, socially and sexually dominant, sophisticated and well-educated, struggles with integrity, and has a troubled past. And look, a Byronic hero doesn't need to have all these characteristics. They may just have a few of them, but these are different characteristics that make up a number of different Byronic heroes. So, you've made it. Look, let's just go back and cover the key points of the lesson. Romanticism is roughly the period between 1789 and 1850. Romanticism was a reaction against the Industrial Revolution and the Enlightenment. To be a Romantic is to take the side of nature against industry. The Romantics disagreed with the Enlightenment values of progress and rationality, especially progress as defined by technological advancement and urbanisation. Romanticism is characterised by its emphasis on emotion, the purity of childhood, the glorification of past and critique of progress, absolute truth, and the deification of nature. Transcendentalists believed in the inherent goodness of both people and nature. They believed that society and its institutions ultimately corrupted the purity of the individual, and had faith that people are at their best when truly self-reliant and independent. The Byronic hero was a mysterious, brooding anti-hero. And that's it. You've made it. We're at the end of the lesson. Look, thank you so much for watching and listening. Look, I hope you've enjoyed the lesson, and I hope it's been interesting and educational. If you did enjoy it and you would like to subscribe, you can press on the bottom right at a button there. We will be bringing out more similar videos in the very, very near future. And yes, thanks again for watching.
The Filipino culture is one of many customs and traditions found in the Asian continent, a mainland disconnected from the other parts of the world for much of its history. It comes to no surprise that the values and mores we practice are not unlike any other parts of the earth. And such a diverse collection of societies can bring forth a plethora of artistic works, more specifically, literary works. So, in the vein of academic research, we will present to you as best as we can the colorful world of Asian literature. Let's begin! Let us first discuss the literary works of China. According to Goldbat 2019, China has gone through an unceasing 3,000 years as an enlightened, well-recorded civilization with a culture that influences the majority of Asian countries, only comparable in influence to the Greco-Roman culture in the West. Is known for their visual treatment of their writing works, similar today to what we know as calligraphy, and also their philosophical, religious, and scientific themes. A type of literature that is honored in China to this day is poetry. The dense and short lines of writing, paired with the distinct designs of the works, make it quite a popular art form within and out of the country. Another popular genre of Chinese literature comes in the shape of novels. The most important novel in Chinese history would be The Dream of the Red Chamber, or Hong Lou Meng. Originally written in the 18th century by Cao Zan, and later published in its complete version by Cheng Wei Wan and Gao Yi. The themes of Chinese mythology, philosophy, and tradition remain difficult to dissect in detail to this day. It spawned an English translation, film and opera adaptations, countless unofficial sequels, and even its own field of study dedicated to analyzing it called Redology. Whether one looks at the elegant images and writing styles of the classical poems or the subtle meanings of the Dream of the Red Chamber, Chinese literature remains one of the most unrivaled legacies of art and culture around the world.
Next up is the land of unity and diversity, known as India. The second most populated country in the world is best recognized as an array of different ethnic cultures. From the groups in Pakistan, Bangladesh, Myanmar, you'll be hard pressed to find another country with as many contrasting traditions as India. The first recordings of literary works from India were said to be written in Sanskrit. Some of these works include the Hindu scriptures, known as the Veda and the Upanishads, erotic texts such as the Kama Sutra, and even the Indian epics and folktales like the Mahabharata, Ramayana, and other collections of sacred literature that is labeled collectively as Puranas. The two Indian epics are considered to be the most important poems in Indian culture. As stated by Doniger, this enormous poem is about a war waged by the Kauravas against the exiled Pandava brothers. The actual plot rarely matters for people, as it takes up about a fifth of the entire text. Instead of the epic serve as the evolution of Hinduism in India, from the introduction of sectarian beliefs, Hindus' connection with Buddhism, and most importantly, preaching the words of the Dharma, or the code of conduct, of which we haven't even mentioned the numerous other groups of languages with their own literary works. Tamil literature in South India, Prakrit literature that came out as an offshoot of the Buddhism-inspired Sanskrit, inspired literary works, and even English literature that is known to have more Western approach to Indian storytelling. The colorful background of its people, adding to the complicated style of the artistic work, gives the entirety of the Indian culture vibrant and earnest energy that's unlike any other.
Here we are now on the island of Japan, a relatively unique island chain for the fact that most of its life was spent in the isolation from the rest of the world. And unlike the Chinese literature that declined and resurfaced over a period of cultural changes, Japanese literature never faded or westernized as a practice. Kin 2016 describes Japanese literature as favoring ambiguity, and the particles of speech which leads to works that are cryptic and abstract. This is not to say that their literary works are free from it. Indeed, Japan is famous for its streets, a hindrance to fashion and refinement, much like the Chinese counterpart it was inspired from. It also branches away from Chinese culture even more by adapting themes and emotion and universal feelings instead of philosophy and tradition. The earliest known writings that still exist today are the Konkiki and the Nihon Shoki, two mythic texts that details the folk tales, legends, and tradition. Some of these tales are based on Chinese Buddhism and folk tales, but it mostly has its own material from their ethnic religion of Shinto. Japan Guide 1997. Moving into the literary works themselves, the most popular genre in writing in Japan are poetry, novels, and drama. In the case of poetry, the first thing that comes into mind is the iconic haiku and taka forms. Haiku originate as the 70-syllable three-line poem with subject matters that describe the natural states of the certain place, while taka is a syllable five-line poem and tackles any subject like courtship, gratitude rather, and self-reflection. Taka Journal 2015. Reading a haiku or taka was said to be inflict a sensation of passion and spirits. This, along with these visual art styles adapted from China, makes Japanese poems quite an interesting read. Some famous poets are the likes of Maotsu Basho, Masaoka Shinki, Kobayashi Isa, and Yosha Buso, known as the greatest haiku master of Japan. In the topic of novels, the tale of Genji was made in the 11th century by Murasaki Shibuku of Heian period, a work that can be considered as the one of the first novel of human history. It draws similar qualities with Dream of the Red Chamber in the sense that it illustrates the lives of those people in Japan at the time. Instead of philosophy, a religion as the main theme, it tackles the human passion, desires, and the perceptive emotion that Japanese literature is known for. However, other important works generally sprouted from the 20th century. One example is Haruki Murakami and his gritty and edgy novel Almost Transparent Blue. Another is Haruki Murakami, obviously known for his book Shiharu-san and Kafka. On the floor, as stated previously, the common themes of human emotion what makes Japanese literature timeless. Their works transcended cultural barriers and instead focus on elements anyone can relate to, provided you can tolerate the more often than not discrete subject matters. With its deep and reflective styles of writing, the thoughtful and brilliant nature of its storytelling, and the ambiguous theme it tackles, Japanese literature is quite of the heartfelt and thought-provoking experience that sometimes not even English literature can match.
We went through China, India, and Japan, and now we arrive here in the Philippines. According to WordPress 2018, literature in the Philippines withstood time and different periods and has evolved through generations. For every period that passed, different genres appeared, and these literary works rooted from all regions reflecting their culture, society, and lifestyle. The early works of oral literature such as the epics, legends, folk tales, songs, and other forms of creative writing by the ethnic groups are classified under the pre-colonial period, with every different region having its own sets of beliefs and influenced by the cultures nearby them. When the Spanish occupied most of the archipelago, beliefs and practices were either lost in time or retold to fit the culture of Spain. Notable writers of this time were Francisco Balagtas and his work Florante at Laura, and José de la Cruz with Ibong Adarna. Both of these works are considered one of the best of Philippine literature, despite bearing the influence of European folk tales and mythology, as an obvious sign of our initial culture's decline. Still, the Spanish literary practices such as the corrido, awit, cenáculo, zarzuela, and others did help the Filipino culture evolve out of tribal traditions. The country has gone through an odyssey of identity changes, cultural uprisings, and world-spanning influences, but one fact that has always persisted is that the Philippine art of literature will always display the best works one can ever find.
So that is our video discussion for week 15 lesson. You may also check your handouts and PDF files for more information and for more topics regarding about week 15. And then for references and suggested readings, kindly refer to your handouts and PDF files as well. So for activity for week 15, we have activity 1, identification. So identify what is being asked and write your answers on a separate sheet. So that is for our activity for week 15. So once again, I will just post the video links that I have shared to you during our discussion. And then before ending this lesson, I would like to say thank you and share a Bible verse from the book of Mark, chapter 9, verse 23. Said Jesus, everything is possible for one who believes. So thank you once again and God bless.